Is Kevin Seitzer to blame for the Braves' offensive struggles this year? Do the Braves have enough prospect capital to make any significant moves this trade deadline? I'll answer those questions and many more on today's Mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of the Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Check out the podcast there as well at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback, and maybe you'll be featured on an episode, just like today's episode, where all of your questions will be featured in our mailbag episode. If you're new and watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. While you're there, hit that thumbs up button as well, as it does help support the show a ton whenever you do that. If you're listening on the audio version and you can't make it over to YouTube to hit those buttons, make sure you leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, wherever it is you listen to Locked On Braves. If you're an everydayer, let me know down in the comment section below. Always enjoy hearing from you. And we're doing a live episode tonight, so shout out to some of those who are here with me. We got Floyd Donnelly, Brennan Gandy, David B69, Jeffrey Humphreys in here, Matt Karcher, Jacob Dozier, Leland Hurt, Lone Wolf, all joining me here live. I'm sure we'll have more coming in. OBS, CJ Palmer. I see you out there. Thank you so much for joining. It is a mailbag podcast. I got 20 questions to get to on today's episode. Some of them very similar. A lot of them have to do with the offense. A lot of them have to do with who the Braves could trade for. But we'll run through all of those questions on today's podcast, and we'll also preview the upcoming series against the A's. Another series that, on paper, you feel like the Braves should win pretty easily, but nothing's coming easy for this Atlanta Braves team right now. Before we get into all that, though, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. All right, like I said, we got a ton of questions to get into. I don't have them queued up in any type of order. I know there's several in here on Kevin Seitzer that I'll get to, but I'm just going to start at the top here. And the first one coming from fellow Locked On host, Peter Pratt. If you're not following Miami Marlins _UK on X, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because Peter is hilarious over there. And he knows what pain feels like being a Marlins fan. He says, is there a Marlins Braves trade that could happen this year? I mean, certainly there could be. I know Jesus Luzardo is somebody that, a lot of Braves fans have wanted. I don't know that there's a significant deal happening between those two teams. I know Jazz Chisholm is somebody that a lot of Braves fans would love to have, but I don't know if the Braves are going to give up, because for either one of those guys, I would think you're probably going to have to give up either AJ Smith-Shawver, Hurston Waldrop, Spencer Schwellenbach. You're going to have to give up one of your top 3 or 4 prospects. I don't know if the Braves are willing to do that, I don't necessarily know if it matters within the division, but I just don't know if the Braves would be willing to part with those guys for any of the pieces that the Marlins have. Obviously, Jazz would be, a great addition for the Braves. You can play several different positions. You can play center field. You can play, on the infield. He's also had trouble staying healthy, and I like Jazz. I wouldn't mind having him. Also, Peter wouldn't want to hear me saying this. I also think he's a little overrated. But either way, would be a good player. Would obviously, be a fun player to have. Kind of bring some of that spark and energy to this Braves team. So I think there's a deal there that could happen. But I think if it does, it'd probably be more of a minor type of trade. I don't know how much service time Brian De La Cruz has, but maybe somebody like that I could see the Braves trading for that maybe wouldn't be quite as expensive, and somebody that I think is having, a pretty good year, could be a solid player. So I think if the Braves and Marlins were to hook up, it'd be on a little bit shorter term deal. Brian De La Cruz has 3 more years of service time under arbitration. Is what I'm trying to get to there. Kelnick's Laser Cannon says, did anyone think of turning injuries off? And yeah, I don't think anybody did. Look, it's AJ Minter is going on the IL now. We've already lost Spencer Strider, Ron Acuna Jr. If we had the power to hit that button, we definitely should have. It's been a rough year, but it's not just the Braves. A lot of teams dealing with injuries, but I wish you could just turn that off like you can in MLB The Show. Sam Gravity, could the collegiate summer league clubhouse atmosphere end up being this club's downfall? I don't know what that means. The collegiate, i.e., maybe, or he followed up on that. Maybe having a little edge is beneficial to a professional team. I mean, certainly, and there's another question about that in here too that we'll get to, but there does seem to be this sense of non-panic from the Braves team, which generally I think is a great thing over 162. But I do think that's kind of hurt them in the postseason. I think that's exactly what one of the questions we got tonight kind of asked. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Obviously, I'm not in that clubhouse. We're all speculating from the outside. Everything you hear and see, these guys aren't worried about it, and they believe they'll turn things around. I do think they're pressing a little bit, but I don't think the clubhouse atmosphere really is playing much into what's going on right now with this Braves offense. Ballistic says, why are we sputtering and failing to win series that we should have in the bag? This is too good of a team to look like this. The offense, I mean, plain and simple, that's why they're sputtering, because they can't win games when the other team scores more than 3 runs. And last year, that just wasn't a problem. You fell behind, 3-0 early, like you did in the game on Thursday, which, by the way, if you want to hear more about that game, go listen to the postcast with me and Grant McCauley on Locked On Sports Atlanta, or that's now also in your Locked On Braves podcast feed. We're not going to go over that one again here, but I mean, it's just, you fall behind like that this season, you just have no faith that the team can come back. And even if the pitching does a good job and holds them right there, there's not much spark and energy in this offense to come back. So until that happens, they're going to lose to teams like this. They're not playing better than the Nationals right now. I mean, the Nationals just outplayed them in that series. So they're just not that good at this moment. I'm going to continue to say that because I still think they're going to be a good, if not great team this year, despite all the injuries. But just right now, and this stretch, and it's a longer stretch than I ever would have imagined, they're just not good. They're not better than the Nationals at this moment. Braves guys, should the Braves consider making Ronald the DH for 2026 and after, assuming Ozuna's option is picked up for 2025? I mean, Acuna's going to be, 28 in 2026, I think. So maybe you move him to left field. I mean, the arm is still good enough. I think you can keep him in right. I think when he does come back, especially next year in particular, even with Ozuna there and that option being picked up, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Ronald going back and forth between outfield and DH, similar to what he did in 2022. I mean, it would be a way to keep him off his legs a little bit. I think more than anything, we're going to see a version of Ronald Acuna Jr. that just can't run. He's going to have to calm things down on the base pass. And that's unfortunate because it takes away part of what makes him so special. But I just think that's where the future is heading for Ronald. Again, you've seen these scares on the base pass now where he's making those quick plants, in a rundown or just getting back to a base. And that's when you're seeing these issues with the knees. So I think more than anything, more than playing defensively, I think it's just the running that's going to have to slow down for Ronald once he does come back. Aegon says, do you agree AA should target an outfielder with a year of control like Taylor Ward versus a cheaper rental, productive bat now, and if Acuna needs more time to recover like 2022? I mean, this is a cop-out answer, but it just depends on the price. I mean, is Taylor Ward going to cost you an AJ Smith-Shawver or a Hurston Waldrop or a Spencer Schwellenbach? Then I don't know that I'd do that deal. Can you get look at what they did in 2021. Those were all rental bats. You gave up hardly anything for those. I would almost rather do that than give up what you're going to need for part of the future of the rotation for, somebody who, and Taylor Ward, just him specifically, I think he could be a solid player. I don't think he's certainly not replacing Ronald Acuna Jr. I don't think he's going to be a top of the order type of bat, and maybe he would right now with the way this lineup is performing. But again, it all just kind of comes down to price. Am I having to give up one of those top 3 prospects that I mentioned? If so, then I think the price is probably too high, and you just go with the cheaper rental. and kind of do what you did in 2021. All right, a lot more questions to get to. Again, more questions about the offense, more questions about Kevin Seitzer, more questions about potential trade opportunities, what the Braves could give up. We'll get into some of those here next. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. You want to bet on baseball right now, and look, I'm not a gambler by any means, but I would take the under on whatever they have out there for the Braves at the moment, because they just cannot score many runs right now. I talked about it on here recently. You look at FanDuel and you look at the let's look at the win totals. We haven't done that in a little bit, but you look at the win totals right out there right now for the Atlanta Braves, and it is not nearly what you saw out there to begin the season. In fact, you look at it for the Philadelphia Phillies, they have theirs at 100.5 wins right now. So the Braves obviously falling in the view of a lot of people out there, including the betting odds. You have the World Series favorites right now. It's the Dodgers at plus 260, then the Yankees, then the Phillies, and then the Braves. And I'm kind of surprised they still have the Braves there in the top four. But if you're to the NHL and you want to go on over there, the Stanley Cup Finals, the Panthers are your favorites at plus 130, and then the Dallas Stars at plus 230. And in the NBA, you have the Celtics at minus 230, and the Mavericks, who I think are going to wrap things up tonight, going to the finals as the underdog in the NBA Finals matchup. So again, check all that out on FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/PlaySafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You like watching sports on your TV all day, or having sports on your TV all day just to hear the news of the day? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories around all the major sports. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, I want to jump right back into the questions because we got so many more to get to. Next one comes from Papa Sanders, who says, when will you start going into draft prospects like James Tibbs and Cam Smith from FSU? So that is kind of a good segue, because I want to talk about coming up next week. We'll have our Minors Monday like we always do. And then starting in June, I am going to have a segment once an episode every week looking at mock trades. I'm going to ask for some of your mock trades on social media. So look for that tweet. Send me in your best mock trades, and we'll go over those. And I'm also going to have a segment every week now going forward, leading up to the MLB draft, where I talk about, the best draft prospects out there, some prospects that are tied to the Braves, some prospects that I like. And I like Cam Smith. He's a hitter for Florida State that I have always liked. And, I wouldn't mind taking him there. Maybe he probably had to take him with that 24th overall pick. I don't know if the Braves would do that, but he is a hitter that I really like in this draft. So again, just kind of what to look forward as we start the month of June. We're going to have a mock trade segment every week, and we're going to have an MLB draft prep segment every week going forward. So looking forward to doing those. And I said forward too many times there. Chris Mofield says, everyday pod listening. Thank you so much for that. Does this team have any leaders to step up and call some things out and try to right the ship? Sale maybe, but he doesn't hit. So Sale is more of that fiery guy, and I think that's part of why they brought him in. But you're right, it's kind of hard to get that from a pitcher who's throwing every fifth day. And again, he's not the problem. I feel like it has to be somebody on offense, but Riley's not that kind of guy. Matt Olson's not that kind of guy. Ozzy's a leader, but he's a leader in the sense that he just keeps everybody loose. He's not the guy that thinks going to get on to everybody. Travis d'Arnaud's a leader too, but I also don't think he's a guy that's going to get in there and ruffle feathers. I don't know that they have that guy that's just going to go off, break a bat on the wall and do anything like that. I don't think they have anybody like that. I don't know if they need anybody like that necessarily, but I just don't think there's anybody position player wise that's going to do that. That's going to go into the clubhouse and kick over the food table. I just don't think they have anybody that's going to do that. I mean, maybe Brian Snitker does it at some point, but I don't see a position player on this team that that has that type of, I don't even know if you want to call that leadership. I don't think they really have that in them to kind of, pitch a fit like that, however you want to say it. Ecuadorman says, what prospects could you give up for a fourth or fifth starter and an outfielder with Owen Murphy hurt and pretty weak farm system? I'm not sure Braves have enough ammo for both. What do you think? So, I mean, for a fourth or fifth starter, I feel like there's plenty there that the Braves wouldn't have to give up one of their top prospects for that. And again, we kind of talked about it earlier. I don't think you'd have to give up much for a rental outfielder. Again, it depends on the type of outfielder you're going for. If you want to get somebody like a Taylor Ward or a Jazz Chisholm with years of control, then you're going to have to give up one of those top three prospects. But if not, I think there's plenty to get a depth piece for the outfield, or to get somebody who can come in and maybe give them a shot, which they pretty much did in 2021. So I think there's plenty there to get somebody of that caliber, a fourth or fifth starter or a rental outfielder. I still believe there's plenty in the farm system to do that without having to give up any of your top guys. John Saunders says, to this point in the year, you said you weren't worried about the Braves offense. We're now roughly 1/3 of the way through the regular season, and the offense has shown no signs of life since April 20th. At what point do you worry? What can AA do before or at the trade deadline? I'll tell you this. I will worry at the end of June. I'm going to give it one more month. And it's not to say that I'm not worried now. Clearly, it's been a month and a half. Something is off about this team. I still think there's too long of a track record for a lot of these guys to say they're just all of a sudden not good, that they're all 700 OPS players. Keeping in mind that offense is down this year, and that's probably playing into it some. But we've said it over and over, and I don't know necessarily why it is, but May is just not a great month for them, and June is typically when this team takes off, offense included. That's generally in baseball when we see home runs take off as well. I mean, that's well known. When the weather warms up, we start to see more home runs, and that's what this offense is built on, is hitting home runs. So I am not at a panic level right now, but we get through the month of June and we don't see signs of improvement from this offense, then you can consider me worried. You can consider me, as close to a panic mode as you can be, especially, if they have another losing month like they did in May, then I'm going to start to worry a little bit, or not a little bit, a lot of it. E. Goldie says, Seitzer received a lot of credit for what the Braves offense did last year, deservedly so. Should he now be questioned, criticized about what is happening this year? How much influence does the hitting coach have at the level? Your last question is kind of where I've always been. I don't know how much influence hitting or pitching coaches, for that matter, have. You listen to a lot of players. They will tell you they have certain people that they go to talk about hitting, to talk about pitching. Chipper Jones, well known for going to his dad for hitting advice when he was in a slump. And, those coaches are there, to put a word in a hitter's ear. They certainly do a lot. I'm not trying to underplay what hitting and pitching coaches do. I'm just somebody that I've never put a lot of stock into the importance of a hitting or a pitching coach. I think they're the people that it's most easy to blame when things are going wrong. But ultimately, they don't hit. They're not up there. They're not the ones up there trying to execute. It's on the players, but the coaches are the easiest ones to blame. And it's hard for me to just believe that all of a sudden Kevin Seitzer can't coach. With the way the offense that, this historic offense that we've had. One thing I'll say, offense is down. We talked about that a lot on yesterday's podcast, or I recorded this morning. If the baseballs have changed and launch angle is not the thing anymore, and that's been the Braves thing for years now, then perhaps there does need to be a change in approach. And it needs to be more just making contact, putting ball in play, and not necessarily looking for hitting it hard. It's crazy to say, but you should want to hit the baseball hard. That should give you the best results. That doesn't seem to be necessarily the case right now. I still want to believe that it will over 162. But again, if the baseballs have changed and you're not getting as rewarded for your hard contact, then maybe a philosophy does need to change. And Seitzer needs to be looking forward thinking with that. But we don't know if the baseballs have changed. Major League Baseball is not going to tell us that, but clearly something is different. Matt says this team is methodical and patient with everything, lacks a sense of urgency, which I feel cost them in the playoffs, especially when things aren't going well. They need the Jock Peterson type on this team. They need someone to light a fire under them. Thoughts on that? Kind of already touched on this. I agree. Over 162, that calm demeanor that this Braves team has, I think suits them well. I think it has cost them in the playoffs the last couple of years where there's not that sense of urgency. And even right now, the guys know they're not doing well. They see their numbers when they're walking up to the plate. But even now, it feels like there's not a ton of urgency. And look at the team. You had a chance, and look, it wasn't going to matter if the Braves didn't score any runs, but you felt like with Ronaldo Lopez going on Thursday, it was going to give you a chance to win, and they push him back because they're thinking more of down the road. So even the Braves as a team don't seem to be too concerned with the present. And maybe that pays off in the end. And again, we don't care right now. But just this team in general this year, it seems to be more, let's just get through the season. We know we're going to make the postseason. Let's make sure we're set up best for that time of year. And again, hopefully that strategy works. But it's frustrating right now in the moment. Justin asks, with the offense still struggling, is it maybe time to start questioning Kevin Seitzer despite the goodwill he's built up over time? I kind of already answered that. I think, again, if the game has changed, which is frustrating because if it has changed and the baseball's changed and nobody was told, I don't know that I can really put that on Kevin Seitzer to say, okay, I need to change approach now because baseballs aren't traveling further. And so maybe the strategy that we built up over the years of, swing as hard as you can, make as hard as contact as you can, get lift on the baseball and hit home runs. If you're suddenly not getting rewarded for that as often anymore, then maybe your strategy does need to change. So again, that's the only thing I would kind of put on Kevin Seitzer. Jackson Baswell says, I don't think I've ever seen an offense so cold all at one time before. Everyone in the lineup is struggling at once. In your opinion, what do you think needs to turn around for the offense? For one thing, they need to stop striking out so much. And that to me has really been a problem over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I think part of that is we are seeing this offense start to press a little bit, trying to do a little bit too much. So the strikeouts, for one thing, have to change. They also just have to start getting rewarded for their good swings. Again, I hate to put this all on bad luck, but they're still up there leading the league in hard hit percentage, average X velocity, all of that. They're just not getting the results on these balls that they got last year. Again, for whatever reason, if the ball has changed, whatever it may be. Leland says, a couple of questions. Changes have been made to the lineup and additional personnel brought in to remedy lack of offense. I think it's time to consider changes in some coaching positions. Sounds drastic, but drastic times, drastic changes. What do you think? Kind of talked about that. I don't put a lot on the coaches. The players ultimately have to get it done. Leland says, what's the issue with AJ that's serious? Sounds like it's not serious, but something that he's been dealing with and just wasn't going away, just some hip inflammation. I think he'll be okay. And 3, do you think all of these issues, like of offense, personnel, injuries, do you think A will be more aggressively pursue Fried to get his on board for future season? I don't think any of this really, signals that they need to go out and get Max Fried. I'd love to have him because I think he's still an ace, but I don't think it really has anything to do with the Fried situation. Caden Hurd, do you like the idea of Randy Arozarena for AJ Smith-Shawver, or is that an overpay? Maybe try to get a middle of the rotation piece with him. I just feel like he's the kind of player we need to bring a spark come playoff time, and I think will turn it around if he gets a good situation. I don't know what the contract status is right now for Randy Arozarena, but he's a solid player. I would love to have him. I think, he brings you kind of that speed, power dynamic that you miss with Ronald. So I know he's been struggling, batting 161 right now to start the season, but he's been one of the most consistent players. He's had a 2020 season in 3 straight years leading into 2024. So he's been really consistent, still fairly young. He's a free agent after the 2026 season. So you get him for 2 more seasons after this one. That'd be a high price. AJ Smith-Shawver would be a high cost. So I wouldn't be against it. I don't think, because I think Randy Arozarena is a good player and would certainly help spark this team. So yeah, I mean, he's somebody that I would like. I don't know that I would necessarily pull the trigger on that. Ask me again when we do the mock trades on coming up Tuesday. Seth C says, were the Braves cheating last year? Rumors starting to carry some weight. It's gotten me questioning it a little bit at this point too, but no, the Braves weren't cheating last year, but whatever they were doing, certainly start doing it again, because this is terrible. Dustin Mounts, what would you consider the biggest need now? Outfield, offense, starting pitching, or bullpen? Duvall has wrist issue history. Sale and Lopez haven't pitched full seasons in years, and the bullpen has been decent but injury prone. I still think the biggest need is starting pitching depth, just because, and I'm fine with the starting pitching the Braves have. That's not the issue, but it's just, it feels like another injury is coming and you have to be prepared for it. And so I feel like you need to go out and get another pitcher to add some depth there in case something does happen down the stretch. Because as you mentioned, Chris Sale and Ronaldo Lopez haven't pitched full seasons in a long time. They're already trying to baby Ronaldo Lopez. So I still think starting pitching depth is the biggest key. Look, on offense, these guys are just going to have to step up and get it done. It's not like you're replacing a lot of these guys. Maybe you can bring in an outfielder. Maybe you bring in a shortstop. I also don't know that the Braves have the prospect capital to bring in anything that is significantly better than what they have now. So starting pitching depth is still the biggest need for me at the trade deadline. Nancy says, can we stop with the Ray Kerr project? We have starting pitchers and minors who deserve a chance. Let's hope they give Schwellenbach another start. I hated what they did to Soroka last year. Too much up and down. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Nancy. And I went on a rant about that on the postcast. So if you haven't listened to the postcast, go back and do so. But the way they've handled this Ray Kerr situation is it's just plain terrible. Well, what they've done to this guy, who I think is a good arm, and I'm okay if they want to turn him into a starter, but you don't do that on the fly at the major league level. You give him time in the minors to get stretched out and prepared for that. So they have handled Ray Kerr just terribly. And I don't say that a lot about the Braves front office, but what they've done with Ray Kerr is a disservice to him. And again, I think he's a good pitcher. I think he can throw some big innings for the Braves, but they just have not done him any favors. All right, that's all the questions. Thank you for submitting all those on social media. Thanks for all the comments we got here. We do have another segment. I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you why the Braves are going to win a series over the A's. It's going to happen. I'm speaking it into existence. We'll discuss that here next. All right, this next sponsor, I don't even really have to look at my notes other than to tell you about the great code that you can use at stitchfix.com/MLB today to get 20% off your first fix. I'm wearing a great shirt. I had these shirts already in my closet, Stitch Fix new, and they sent me more like them because they know how much I love these two-tone shirts like this. I was blown away. And my wife's used Stitch Fix for years. She is a huge supporter of them. But I've had pretty much the same wardrobe since high school, definitely since college. But when we got on board with Stitch Fix, they sent me some boxes and I was blown away. I loved everything in there. And it's just truly incredible. Their stylists do a great job of matching exactly what you like. And I didn't think they could. Again, I was skeptical, and I got my box and I was blown away about the stuff they like in there. And now my wardrobe is completely redone, and my wife is all the happier for it. And she loves the stuff that they sent over as well. And so did I. It's good looking stuff. It's comfortable, and it certainly has helped me look more like a grown man at this point and stop dressing like I'm still in high school, in college. So I advise you as well. I encourage you, try out Stitch Fix. You can do so today, stitchfix.com/MLB. You get $20 off your first fix. Again, they'll send you a box, your stylist, personal stylist, send you a box of clothes. You keep what you like, you send back what you don't like, but I'm telling you, you're going to like what you get. Again, it's stitchfix.com/MLB. You must redeem within 7 days of signing up. All right, the Braves are taking on the A's this weekend. The A's have been surprisingly decent. They're 23-34, but a minus 61 run differential. That's second worst in the American League. They played 12 innings on Thursday and lost. Mason Miller threw over 30 pitches, so you'd imagine he's out for the first two games of this series, so that's possibly an advantage for the Braves. Lucas Erceg, who kind of had his breakout performance against the Braves in Oakland last year, he's also been very dominant out of that bullpen, so a couple of relievers there to watch, but they're They're 4th in the league in home runs, but they're 21st in OPS, and that's because they're 27th in average. They can't hit, but when they do, it's usually a home run. So they've been able to get the home run ball this year. 10th most walks. You cannot give them free passes and then watch them hit a 2 or 3 run homer. Got to throw them strikes because they have the 2nd most strikeouts in baseball. And unlike the Nationals, they're not going to run on you a ton either. 23rd in steals. So it really just is the walks and the home runs. That's what the Oakland A's have taken advantage of this season. They're 23rd in ERA and WHIP, and they're 28th in K per 9. If we see another pitcher, and we see a pitcher in the A's this weekend tie a career high in strikeouts, I am going to lose my mind because this team just does not strike out a lot of hitters. It's JP Sears versus Ronaldo Lopez. Sears a 111 WHIP, just 40 strikeouts in 60 1/3 innings. Again, it's another pitcher. It's another opportunity for this team to get going. We'll see if that actually happens. Looks like they're going to throw Aaron Brooks on Saturday against Chris Sale. Aaron Brooks has 9 strikeouts in 17 1/3 innings. Do not strike out against these guys. And then Charlie Morton on Sunday. Not sure who's going for the A's yet. If the Rays do not win this series, I don't know what I'm going to do because I'm still going to watch this team. That's just what we do. But I'm going to say it now. Braves are winning this series. It's going to happen. I want to sweep, though. I want to see them get on track. This is a team you need to beat, but I've said that here a lot recently, and they haven't done it. But Braves are going to win a series against the A's. I'm predicting it. I'm speaking it into an existence. It's going to happen. All right, that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for all those who have joined me here live. We got Laro Bond in here, Julie C, Doc's Cards made it. Good to see you, Doc. Worry Senpai in here as well, having good conversations. I appreciate all of that. Appreciate all of you joining me here. I'll go back and read the rest of these comments once we are done. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that like button. Follow us on social media, and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.